We are recording, starting the webinar. All right, everybody, welcome back. Thank you guys for joining us. It's been an awesome day. This is our last session of the day. Thank you for hanging around. I know it's been a ton of content, hopefully all helpful. Rob is our VP of Earned and Owned Media. Rob has joined Cardinal in the past, I don't know, Rob, 3 months, and I have learned so much from him. He has a deep background. I'm going to let him tell you about himself in marketing, in healthcare marketing, in-house, in agency. And I think at the end of the day, what we're really trying to address, and Rob is going to speak to you about, is this role of your organic digital presence in the long term. How are we going to measure? What should it look like consistently and in an ongoing basis? I think we hear a lot of stigma around, well, SEO is just fixing some technical stuff on my website, and then I don't have to keep doing it, right? And that is so not the case. I want Rob to share with you some of the reasons why. So Rob, I'm going to let you tell everyone listening a little bit about yourself. I'm going to go off video and I'll rejoin you guys for Q&A at the end.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. So I am excited to be here. My daughter thinks this presentation is about Taylor Swift, so it's me. Hi, I'm the presenter. It's me. I have a long agency career working in healthcare, B2B, across a lot of different types of healthcare as well, from Fortune 500 to the classic multi-location, hospital systems, dental, etc. So it's exciting. This is a topic I truly believe in. I've seen some organizations have great success and sort of eager to dive right in. We have a lot to get to, so I'm going to try to move fast, and I'll also do my best to address any questions as we go. And I'm back tomorrow at the Q&A session if there's anything we can't get to. So we'll go through a quick agenda. Target a little bit just about setting the stage on how we're going to speak about SEO today, set up a foundation, talk about goals, how to drive a strategy towards integration, and leave you with a little bit about our perspective on SEO futures, both as a competitive advantage, but also a little bit about where SEO is headed in this AI-driven, no-click search environment and why it's still important. Great. So for today's conversation, it's key for me to set the stage on how we're going to talk about SEO, which is strategically. Tomorrow, Amber will actually drill into a lot more of the tactics, the opportunities, some of the local. She's amazing. I recommend you do not miss her session. But today we're talking really about how it should be positioned as a strategic initiative, and honestly, a strategic investment as part of your larger digital portfolio. So, if you're sitting in your organization and you're hearing people say things like, can you add some SEO to this content? Or did that page get SEO'd? You're probably not talking about strategic SEO. So again, today we're really going to focus on that long-term strategic impact and really how to think, measure, and approach a foundation for strategic success. You've seen the slide today, but we'll show it to you again. SEO can and will have a tremendous impact on your business, and it tends to have the largest impact when you do it strategically, and you really target that sort of mid to long-term return. Now, that to say, SEO does require some ramp, but does not mean it can't have quick wins. Of course it can, especially depending on where you are in your SEO traffic, organic maturity. Things like conversion rate, site speed, even low-hanging fruit from a local perspective and keyword perspective, it's all there. And when this is done well, you can create just amazing competitive advantages, drive your CAC down, and really be in a spot to really dominate, right? And you see it, right? You see it in places like A Place for Mom, for example, right? A good healthcare example, an aggregator site, right? That started off as sort of this blog and turned into this massive aggregator because of their ability to really dominate in SEO and create a business, right? Out of helping people find care for their aging friends, family, and even themselves, right? You think about SEO, you think about buying property before COVID hit, right? And yet if we only moved faster, if we only got there first, if we only put up that, that barrier to entry, we'd be in a better spot. And I think there's still plenty of opportunity in the healthcare space to be that first mover and to find that real estate. So let's talk about the foundation, right? If you're here, you probably already value SEO. You probably already understand how it plays in a strategic line. But let's talk a little bit about how you create that foundation to have the success strategically. So we're going to talk about being aligned. We're going to talk about being holistic from an SEO perspective. We're going to talk about building a strategy and actually being strategic in your approach, being data backed, and then finally how you can enable yourself with technology. So let's talk about that. This is a post methodology that I hope you take away from this. So this is a methodology I've used basically my whole career. Forrester Research developed it. I worked there back in the day. And it's a way to really create a plan to attack really any problem from a business perspective. So what I want to cover here is the very first step of your SEO journey as you set up a foundation is you need to be business aligned. And I kind of build that into the post methodology, right? So the first step is people. I look at it in two ways. First, and maybe more importantly, I should say, actually, maybe even less importantly, I guess it depends on how you look at your business, your stakeholders. Who are the people who are judging the success of this? What are their interests? How are we going to position this to speak to them? It might be a board, it might be a CEO, it might be a CMO, it could be a doctor. So again, understand that audience. But then on the flip side of people, you have to understand your talent. What talent do you have available? Who is your team? Do you have an agency? Do you have a contractor? Do you have partners? Is it just you? How far can that team and that talent take you, right? These are important things to understand before you get into these next steps. So the second step is setting those objectives. What do you actually want to achieve? How are they going to be, how is those individual people going to be able to do that? Set achievable, measurable goals, goals that are, again, are aligned to that business and aligned to those key stakeholders. Once you have objectives, you can set apart a strategy to attack those objectives and achieve them. And then lastly, and I can't stress this enough, lastly is technology. You should not be building your team and your process around the tech and tools you have. Too many times we go on calls and we hear, I got this cool toy, I got this cool tech. What are you using from AI? You're doing it backwards, right? You really need to take the post methodology in that order. And that gives you a chance to really understand how you're going to succeed, and then give you that chance to really understand which tech you want to take advantage of. And we'll talk a little bit about that again. So regardless of SEO, I hope you steal this because the post methodology has done me a lot of good. So let's talk about the next step. As you understand your team, as you understand your objectives, it's good to understand the toolkit, right? What toolkit do you actually have? Now, each person, each SEO you speak to might have a different perspective on this. They might bucket this slightly different, but this is the way we like to look at it. It's pretty standard in the industry. And you really want to understand, how are we going to balance these, four core elements of SEO? The technical, right? The stuff that's on the back end, making sure your website's optimized, aligned to the crawlers. This is becoming trickier nowadays. Google's put out more algorithm updates in the last year than they have in the previous few combined. And it can't be overstated, right? But it might not need to be where you focus a lot of your time, depending on where you are, again, on that maturity curve. User experience is one that often falls into multiple categories. It could be creative, it could be customer experience team if you have something like that. It could even be the dev team, but it really overlaps strongly with SEO, and we sort of consider it part of that SEO bucket. That's making sure your website is customer centric, right? Customer first. It has a flow. It creates smooth, efficient process and experience, and again, gives you an opportunity to really help that client, help that patient move through your experience and find the care they need. Content performance is probably the most important, right? So this is where you need to be compelling. You need to be authentic. You need to develop content for performance, and again, have a delivery methodology and approach to how you're going to syndicate that content, what content you're going to make. That will kind of all come out in the strategy process. But for now, again, we're looking at these opportunities to say, what tools do we have and what elements of the program can we play with? And then lastly, the local and link building. Now, these tend to be different based on your business, right? Some hyper-local businesses will say local is the absolute most important element of my SEO. And that could be true. But of course, there are also other businesses that run primarily online. And those businesses may not value the local keyword, the local push as much. Link building is one that is valuable. We have some tips and tricks there. It's easy to spend a lot of time and get not a lot of results out of that, but it is valuable. And it can play a big role, but we won't talk too much about that today. I think that's more of a tactical element of driving opportunity than a strategic element, but it is part of the toolkit. Things like reviews, et cetera, also fall into that category. So again, depending on your business, can really change in priority. The essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. And I can't stress how important this strategic step of this process is. Now, I wish I could come to this webinar and just tell you what your strategy could be, but I can't, because strategies are so unique and change massively across the type of organization you are. I just gave a few good examples. Are you digital or are you local? Your SEO strategy already will be completely different across that spectrum alone, right? But on top of that, it really comes down to those objectives that you set. You might be after visibility focused. You might be new to the market, really trying to capture some of that, visibility, some of those rankings, right? Get your name out there. You might be very niche and hyper topical, right? And you're really focused on a very, very, very small audience in a very specific niche industry, and you really have to drill into those specific keywords, and regardless of the difficulty, plow through that. You also might be cross-channel in an integrated marketer, and you're looking to how you can integrate SEO better into a larger stack. So it's difficult for me to tell you exactly what strategy to take. But what I can leave you with is find one that can help deliver and optimize towards those objectives, and try to keep a single independent variable in mind, right? That's pretty standard advice in digital, especially, but try not to do too many things, right? Do you want quality or do you want volume, right? The answer to that question isn't yes, right? You have to figure out what's more important, right? Finding quality in that niche space or potentially driving a much larger visibility effort. So again, it's up to each of you to decide, but I don't rush this. It's important to make sure you're not moving ditch to ditch and driving back and forth. So regardless of your strategy, you're going to need data. And what kind of data, right? What I try to approach any client who doesn't really have a great understanding of their SEO data or really their web data yet is take a step back and create a framework to understand what you need. The two bullets on the left-hand side of the slide are pretty straightforward. And there's another slide coming up soon, as well as a ton of information on our blog and out on the internet around the types of tech you should use. We're not going to focus too much on that, but you do need to start with compliant tracking, right? There are people getting sued out there, but this data is so important. So you got to find a way to get that compliant tracking on your site and get that initial visibility. There's also some, of course, data you can get from things like SEMrush or Ahrefs that are third party that can give you web data as well. Those are also great to use from a research perspective. It's also important to understand as much as you can, connect the full funnel of your data, right? From all the way from that first click all the way through to patient acquisition, and hopefully even sort of the life cycle of that patient. Now that's easier said than done, and each business is going to have a different level of maturity there. But the goal in the short term is how far can we go? How much can we invest to get further? And is it worth it right now for us to consider that? The two on the right are ones you have more control over, right? So these are setting KPIs that achieve the outcome, right? And when I mean outcome, I mean with that core personnel that you've identified as your stakeholder group, right? You have to have those core business KPIs that they care about. Now, each marketing team is going to have a myriad of other KPI that are operate as tsunami buoys or early warning systems that show movement and often help us optimize. But you want to start at the bottom first, right? What are the business goals? What are the goals that we can get buy-in now that if we can show improvement on, the business will believe this is successful and continue to support the investment and of time and money, right, in this initiative. So again, something to take time in. And the fourth bullet again kind of aligns straight to that. You need to get buy-in for consistency, right? We see this all the time. You can't go from priority 1 to priority 2 to priority 3. We already talked about SEO being more strategic in nature. It benefits the most from having a KPI consistency, a plan in place that, again, everyone agrees with and can be mapped back to success of the business, because nothing will chew up your time and get you no results than driving back and forth between multiple goals and multiple KPI. So to close out on post, before we get into some more specifics on how to execute, technology, right? There's opportunity for technology to enable you across the board. And I'm only going to get into a few of these here that are more specific to SEO, because like I said, we've been talking about these things all day. I would definitely start nowadays with some sort of access to SEMrush, Ahrefs, some of the research tools, right? They're not just for the hyper-professional SEOs nowadays. They're very user-friendly, and I suggest even if you're just dipping your toe into this, it enables you to crawl your site. It enables you to see your competitors' keywords. It enables you to understand your progress. Obviously, things like Google Console is a good element to have as well, but these are core tools that I suggest everyone has. I also suggest that you get after the AI space. There are some wonderful tools. We are constantly going through different artificial intelligence tools to vet them, understand if they're valuable for our cause, right? And how we can leverage them to be more efficient. We have tools that can scale SEO across hundreds of sites in seconds. We have tools that help us develop content. Again, it doesn't replace the staff, but it enables us to be, or the strategy, but it enables us to be much more efficient with our time. And that's crucial when it comes to SEO. So again, lots of other tech and tools you should consider. I'm not going to go into all of them today, but two of those alone are definitely things you should consider as you tackle an SEO tech stack. And by the way, they're not particularly expensive either. So you have a foundation, right? Hopefully, if you've gone through that process, you start to understand who you're talking to, what you want to achieve, how you're going to measure it, a little bit about your strategic initiatives and the tech you have to achieve it. So how do we pull it all together, right? How do we pull this into an integrated strategy? How do we really understand what the outcomes are? How do we prioritize, right? How do we actually drill into specific KPIs? Let's talk about it. So this is a key slide I want to spend a minute on because I think this is a stumbling point for a lot of digital marketers who try to dive headfirst into SEO. SEO should be measured in effectiveness, the effectiveness to grow your business, the effectiveness to drive outcomes, not necessarily ROI. ROI is a measure of efficiency. It is a ratio. It is not necessarily a sales number. And SEO is not linear, right, in nature, sort of on a month-to-month or repetitive on a month-to-month basis, right? It's a more long-term growth strategic effort. And it's hard to report on the efficiency in the ROI, month over month, and have a good or interesting story to tell, right? It doesn't make sense with the way you deploy it and how you measure it, right? So you need a measurement tool that aligns to the execution of, the strategy. So at this point, right, and the reason why I call this out and why this is so important is there are too many groups that say things like this, right? Maybe we should just invest a little bit of money in SEO for a few months and see if we get an ROI and then grow our budgets. No, right? First of all, we won't even do that, right, as an agency. And if you're doing it internally, you've already lost, right? It's just not going to work, right? It doesn't work. So things like that are where you really want to make sure you see. This is the hard thing sometimes for the finance teams to understand, right? Well, why don't I just throw all the money into paid search? They can get me an efficiency metric and they can get me something of X value tomorrow, right? But again, that's not what we're trying to do in SEO, and that's why that first steps we talked about are so valuable, right? So make sure you're coming after it the right way. And I like effectiveness. There's some other content on the internet you can kind of search around this, but it's a better way to approach it. Don't get caught up in ratio efficiency month over month. Or at the very least, if they want to start talking about efficiency, wait till you're in the first year, maybe even second year of kicking butt in SEO, and suddenly your efficiency will be amazing, and you'll be the king of the efficiency stack, right? But still won't mean it made sense. So what are some of the core KPIs you can focus on, right? This is an interesting question, right? Most people will go straight to that conversion impact, right? Well, okay, Rob, KPIs are easy, right? How many leads you get me, right? How many attributed opportunities can I go back to the organic stack with, right? Not saying that's wrong. It's a good thing to measure, right? But there are other values of SEO, and depending on your objectives and the strategy, you want to report and make visible some of these other engagements, right? So there's value in the technical SEO, site speed, navigation ease, minimizing errors and issues, right? These are conversion rate, right? These are come right back down to conversion rate optimization, right? So those are key and can drive a lot of value, right? Most companies are pretty good at this, but not everyone. Especially as you scale a site, it's easy to lose sight of the technical impact. Conversion, of course, talked about that, right? Or key, obvious, even. Engagement and visibility. So this is something that some top level CEOs might sort of push aside, but others might not, right? So this is depending on the strategy, what you're looking to do, right? Are you looking to achieve a share of voice? Are you looking to achieve and grow audiences, right? Interesting takeaway, right? As you're doing things like remarketing, growing a huge audience is super valuable, right? And you can do that through SEO. And you can optimize differently, right? You can optimize towards conversion, or you can optimize your efforts towards visibility. Perhaps you have a better remarketing sort of bottom funnel strategy. It'll capture that value at the bottom, right? So that's how the integration starts to come together. And we're about to dive into that here in a minute as well. And then lastly, one that helps is really just kind of look at the growth from the benchmark, right? So if you started a year ago, right, what was sort of the benchmark you were at without a good SEO, concentrated SEO effort, and how have you grown from there, right? How much growth have you brought to the organization? And secondly, what are the types of savings, right? Rich, my counterpart on the paid side here at Cardinal, he and I talk all the time about this. And one of the things he mentioned was, you should really only pay for what you have to, right? And there are ways to actually show, well, if we were to have to capture this traffic via paid, it would have actually cost us X amount, right? And honestly, a lot of times that X amount ends up being higher than the SEO budget in and of itself, right? So sometimes taking such a simple initiative and such a simple math term and say, SEO grew this amount, right? Grew us this much traffic over the last 6 months. If we were to pay for that traffic, what would it have cost, right? And being able to show some of that. So a key step after you've got some of that aligned is prioritization and roadmap, right? And this is something I think that we do really well, and road mapping can be hard, right? So the first step is I do think you should look at an integrated roadmap as often as you can. Some of you may sit in silos. I think many of you probably sit as the, arguably the sole proprietor, right, of your entire marketing organization. But you need to understand and look at your digital universe, including SEO, paid, PR, all the other work you do, and try to understand it as an investment portfolio and understand where can I optimize, where should I be placing my time, and how can I best invest that time and that money to get the outcomes that I need, right? We like the ICE methodology, right? You basically weigh impact to your confidence of success against ease, right? So how much is it going to cost? How hard is it going to be? How's the impact? And how confident am I going to be that it's going to produce results? But again, don't get caught in siloed thinking, right? It's better to take a step back and understand what can I do? What can my team do? What can my budget do to help me achieve goals? And where is it best, best appropriated? This is where aggregate numbers are your worst enemy, right? It's incremental numbers that are most important, right? What is the cost of that next incremental lead and paid? Not the average. You don't want to average against, your branded search, right? As you're looking at the next, right? So as you understand, where's the next incremental growth opportunity within my portfolio, it helps to take a step in that direction from a prioritization standpoint. So the next two slides are exciting, right? And this is sort of my advice as a takeaway is don't overthink integrating, right? It's not as hard as you think. SEO has its own growth agenda. It will provide value in and of itself, right? But it also creates a data-rich environment. And how can we use it, right? How can you use that data? There's so many different ways, right? From helping on a joint keyword strategy, right? A lot of companies are actually removing SEO and paid search and just talking about search in general. There's a lot of demand data. There's a lot of engagement data, right? There's basically a lot of different integrated and adjacent ways that you can plug in the value of SEO into these other groups and these other efforts, right? It can help you, these are just some ideas, right? It can help you better understand your audience and how they behave. It can help you understand which creative and content is most efficient, how it fits into the funnel, some of that customer journey mapping, location data, right? How is the demand? Are things growing or sort of diminishing in demand on certain areas? And one that I really like is actually understanding some of the semantic changes and how you can get ahead of the curve, right? What are the trends we're witnessing? Favorite example is the coronavirus, right? Nobody knows, what is the coronavirus? Oh, you mean COVID, right? We called it coronavirus as a society, as a planet for like a month and a half. And then we all decided, now we're not going to call it that anymore. It's now called COVID-19. And we just called it COVID forever after that, right? Imagine the SEO guy who could have got ahead of the idea of COVID-19 taking off in position. Now, obviously, there's a lot of regulation around that, but the general example holds true, right? How is the business, how is the medical, how is the health system starting to change the way we semantically discuss, and how can you be ahead of the curve, right? Skate to where the pass is going, right? As opposed to waiting for the puck. Lost my mouse. There we go. And then lastly, we talk a little bit more about this as we talk integration, right? But the goal of SEO is to improve your digital outcomes, right? So I talked a little bit about this already, right? It's an investment strategy. How can it impact your blended acquisition costs, right? How can we apply budget to the right spots? How can we invest in SEO strategically to both make bets about where the market's going, to make plans for next year, right? And how we can entrench ourselves and really get ahead of the curve, right? It's not just SEO for SEO's sake. It's not SEO for content's sake. It's not SEO to check a box, right? It's SEO to provide digital outcomes and alleviate some of the strain you're all likely putting on paid media. So let's pivot because I'm getting up on time here, right? But what's coming, right? And what does the future look like if you invest in SEO and you really kind of dive into this opportunity, right? So as you dive forward, a few pieces of advice. Don't overshoot or don't underappreciate the opportunities and the effectiveness of SEO in both understanding your client, driving conversion rate, capturing demand, building credibility in the marketplace, building visibility, crushing your competition, right? And really driving conversions as well, right? It's a very valuable thing, and it's good, obviously, to align to an independent variable. Like I said, maybe it's acquisition, maybe it's visibility, depending on leadership, right? The business goals, but don't let the other value go by the wayside, right? It's all part of that same investment, right? You don't have to pay more to take better advantage of your SEO. I like this slide a lot, right? it is a competitive advantage, right? I gave a few examples early on of businesses that dominate right now and who are selling leads because they're getting so many and they literally can't service them all because of the way their organic machine, right, the way they dominate the search engine. But it's an absolute tool to build an advantage from, right? It provides first party data, right? This is key, right? So all I mean by this, because I know we're in a very compliant space, right? But it provides data that you have that your competitors don't, right? How people are engaging, the journey map, right? Build data, build confidence, right? Build an asset that you can leverage in digital through that data, right? So what am I learning from my SEO execution that is unique, right? That's ours, right? That's mine, that I can't just go buy online, that I can use to be, position and win, right? Renting versus owning, right? Again, a key thing of SEO is the fact that you are earning this, right? And you are creating barriers to entry. There is an advantage to being a first mover here, right? So many SEO strategies nowadays, especially in competitive markets, are how can we attach a long-term keyword, or how can we get hyper local, or how can we find these small nuggets of value in this vast ocean of competition? But someone owns that space, right? There's so many companies we're actually working around because they did such a good job building and entrenching in those core spaces and getting those number one rankings on these key broad-based keywords that we literally have to work around them, right? Medicine and healthcare is moving so fast. These opportunities are opening every single day, right? And it's important to understand and not sit around and wait, because just in paid, for example, in paid, someone with a big budget can come through and just smack you off your high horse, right? And suddenly you have to go to the board and say, remember all that efficiency we're capturing in paid? It's gone. It's gone yesterday because a big investor just dumped $1 billion into one of our competitors, and they just, are really competing hard, right? Not as easy for them to do that within SEO, right? Especially if you get a head start. So don't sit around waiting. It's something that will take a little bit of time and investment, right? But you're really positioning yourself in a cool spot. Then finally, I sometimes use share of voice. I think for SEO, Amber was right. EEAT is a better example, right? You really want to make sure you're understanding the ease, the experience, you're building that authority, and you're building that trust, right? It is a key predictor of success within businesses, right? Businesses who build trust, right? Businesses who build this authority and this presence, this visibility. It's highly correlated to success, right? A lot written about that customer experience and how that contributes to overall business success, right? It's important, right? And SEO plays a big role in doing that. Last slide to leave you with some food for thought, right? SEO is hard. It's getting harder. Google's changing the game a lot. It means it's going to take professionals. It's going to take a dedication. It's going to give you an opportunity to differentiate, right? Hard is good. If it's easy, everyone could do it. And it remains a core channel, right? ChatGPT only controls around 2% of the overall, search volume on the internet still. We are going to see AI continue, but it's a search dominated place, right? Go to where your clients are. They're still searching, right? They're still searching with Google. And at the end of the day, if you have any concerns, shake it off, be fearless, and you can make your SEO journey a love story. So there you go. I bookended the day, and I bookended.
Sounds like Rob likes Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Thanks, Rob. I think you addressed most of the questions in the chat. Like you said, we have an open Q&A session tomorrow afternoon. All of our Cardinal experts are going to be joining that because we realize in these presentations we couldn't get to everything. So please, please, please join us there tomorrow afternoon. We'll be back online tomorrow morning. Same deal as today. Hop into the lobby, check out the schedule for tomorrow, plan out your day. We do a few more concurrent sessions tomorrow. So we'll be kind of maybe running 2 sessions at once. You can go in and build your schedule and make sure you're available for all the things that you want it to be available for. So with that is the end of our day, Scaling Up Day 1, and we hope to see you all back tomorrow. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, thank you.